Morning, folks.
Good morning.
Zach and Jen.
Hey guys, I do want to honor time though, and Chris, I don't know if it's okay with you. It's 11:04, and I think we should get started if that's fine. For all of our Oregon friends, my name is Via Williams, and I'm the president of our Ben Kinney network. So Leslie Hilbert is my counterpart in your Experience network. And we had 1 year of incredible year of primarily Chris last year, and I cannot express how grateful I was for Path to a Million last year. It was really some of the best content I had all year. It was really, really great. And so we had a meeting and we decided, oh, did my speaker change? That is weird.
We can still hear you.
That was really weird. Yeah, it changed to my AirPod. And we decided that we wanted to make this a little bit more of a mastermind feel, right? So we still want to focus on Chris's amazing content, but really work this hard on harder this year on getting you guys talking and masterminding with people you may not know from different geographic areas. I mean, that's kind of the magic of the group, right? So we kind of talked a lot about format, and we have a question we want to ask you. We wanted you guys to be involved in the decision. And one of the questions we want to ask you is, we want you guys to break up into mastermind groups at every single one of these Path to a Million. And as a reminder, Path to a Million is one time a month, right? It's on the third Thursday of the month. And our question to you guys, and I think Leslie's going to throw up a poll, is do you want us to pair you up and curate you with a mastermind group that's the same group all year based on production level, size of team, and we'll take a look at it and say, like, Zach and Jody, you guys, we'll make sure you're with people from, say, Bellingham, Tacoma, Eugene, Portland, making sure that it's like geographically diverse. Gina, we'll make sure that you're with people spread out, and so that you can have a really good networking group plus referral group. And you might even want to kind of hang out offline and bond a little bit. I don't know. Or do you kind of just want random matchups at every single one of these Path to a Millions where, you're just going to get someone new every time. You might get a solo agent. You might get someone at a completely different production level with you. And that sounds more appealing to you. So we're hoping you guys can vote in the poll right now. Is it up? I can't see it. No? Oh, it is up. Okay, here we go. So we're hoping you guys can vote in the poll and let us know, what you want, and we'll deliver. Oh, totally not what I expected. Well, there you go. Shows what I know. Interesting. That is not what I expected. Well, that's why we have you guys vote. That's good. So it definitely seems like they want new people every month. All right. Okay. So cool. There you go. Katie and Leslie, I was wrong. You were right. I'm okay being wrong. All right. So
It takes a lot of that to be okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm totally okay with being wrong. That's why we wanted to ask everybody. I assume people would want to be with people kind of similar challenges with them, but I think this is great. I think it's really great. So so every Path to a Million, then we're gonna just randomly pair you, and it's gonna be a new every month, and that's great. It's no problem at all. And what this is, just so that everybody is aware, if you didn't read your email, everyone here has achieved a level of being over 15 million in production a year. And this is the Experience Network group, which is Chris Suarez leads, just like Ben Kinney leads ours. And they're based in Oregon. And then, of course, the Ben Kinney Network, we're based in Western Washington. And this is just our way to have synergy, have you guys get some different perspectives together and be with like-minded individuals. So with that said, Chris Suarez, my friend, you have the floor. It's all yours, and I'm excited to learn from you today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Really excited about sort of our adjustment and how we run these sessions. The question came up at the end of the year, do we want to continue them? And you know, I had two hands up for yes, let's continue them, and let's begin to just get more interaction and hear from the voices of our agents as well. So thank you for the leadership teams to execute that, and we're gonna do that today actually as well. Here's what we want to do. We're gonna bring in a different guest every single month. And Katie, you want to sort of talk through sort of why we're going to bring people in, and then what sort of the rhythm will be each week or each month rather?
Yeah, we sat down and we brainstormed what last year was and what we wanted this year to be. And one of the things that was important to us was the ability to create a community. And this is a very elite group of people, and the name says it, is on a path to $1 million. And so it's an opportunity to get to mastermind with other people who are on the path to $1 million. And so what we wanted to do within this community is talk with people who have achieved that, whether they, well, you guys have all grossed $1 million, but bring in people from this community who have net $1 million, who have received $1 million, and who have given $1 million, which is MREA 2, right? Like the next level is to give $1 million. So every month that there will be an interview, like this month, the interview is with Chris, of someone who has reached that $1 million mark, and then a chance to mastermind, ask them questions, and talk about how the rest of us can learn from them and get to that $1 million status as well. So when Chris and I were talking about this earlier this week, I said, well, gosh, Chris, you've done this, you've net $1 million. Like, what are those secrets to your success? Like, what are one or two things that we always call secrets to success that we don't want to be secrets anymore? And you could, Chris, tell us, what are one or two things that have led to you being able to net $1 million, receive $1 million, give $1 million, that you could share with the group?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think that if we can leave here with one or two things that we can go back to our business and say, well, how do I implement that? How do I execute that? That's what we're going to mastermind around today. Katie asked me earlier this week, can you come up with one? Like, what's the one thing? And I said, well, I'm not sure if I could come up with one, but I'll come up with two. So you're going to get two today. I'll share the first one. And it's a word that's on your screen, and it is this word practice. And it's something that I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks, as Katie and I were chatting about, hey, how do you sort of boil down your entire business and say what led to where you are today? And it's this word practice. What does that mean? Who wants to share when they hear the word practice, what they think of? How do you define that? Is there an image that comes up in your mind?
Hey, Chris, can I say something about practice?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, it's Nick up here in Bellingham. Practice to me is makes permanent. So I always see and hear practice, and I think, well, what's perfect practice, or what's the right thing I need to be doing to practice so that becomes permanent and a habit. So to me, that's, I hear practice, I want to add a thing to it, makes permanent. So what are we practicing to be perfect, or that habit we need to make?
Yeah, I love that. Why is that so important, do you think? Who wants to share? Like,
Chris,
yeah, go ahead.
I think that it's for me, practice. I always, like, we get to a place that we think we're really good at something, but when you look at like professional athletes who are already the best in their game, and yet they show up every single day for practice, right? And I follow some football players, and they're practicing in the off season, even though there's zero requirement for it. And so when I look at that, it's like, oh, clearly we've never perfected the skill, right?
Yeah,
to me, there's no such thing as perfecting the skill. We keep practicing the skill.
Yeah. I agree with both of those. Here's what I want us to think about when we hear this word practice or write this word practice down. There's a reason why athletes do practice, and ultimately there's two types of practice, right? You might scrimmage, you might drill. The purpose is that I run that play over and over and over and over and over again, such that no matter what shows up on the field, right, on Sunday against that play, no matter what shows up on the court tomorrow night against that play, like I know what my response is going to be. So practice as a verb is that repetition, right? That repetition. And ultimately the purpose of it is so that we know what we're going to do and how we are going to respond to situations, to events, to people, to emotions, to unexpected things. Like it doesn't matter what shows up as the defense. We know what our result is going to be. Seth Godin was talking about practice recently. In fact, his new book is called Be Practice. And this is his quote around practice. He says, process saves us from the poverty of our intentions. And I would say, as Katie said, Chris, what's the one thing or two, what's the one or two things that have led you down the path of where you are today? Like I am a very practiced person. Now it doesn't mean that I want us to move away from this. Okay, I'm going to come in, I'm going to script, I'm going to come in, I'm going to script, I'm going to come in, I'm going to script. Like that isn't as much of the practice I'm talking about. I'm talking about what happens after that. That I know how I am going to respond or how I am going to show up, no matter what shows up in my world. 23 years into this, listen, it's been economic issues, health issues, social issues, personal issues, family issues, like you name it. Like the field has changed constantly. The defenders have changed constantly. But see, I have a practice and I have a process, and I promise whatever my business look like today, I bet you my intentions are better than it is today. I intended to be further along. I intended for it to be better than it is. Like we all have great intentions. Process saves us from the poverty of our intentions. The good news is I at least had practices in my world, in my life, in my business to get me to this point today. Seth Godin says, if we have process, it saves us from those intentions that actually make us poor. Why? Because sometimes we wake up in a bad mood. Yep, I do too. Like sometimes we get some really rough feedback. Yep, I do too, right? Got some today. Sometimes we receive rejection. Yep, I do too. Got some this week. Like we all do. And yet if we know what our game plan is, right? If we know what the process is, we're going to show up. In those moments, he says that we're not the best version of ourselves. We are still ourselves because we know what our process is. We know what our practice is. We have a practice or we have a process. We've already decided what we're going to do. And I would say those that know me know that I live an incredibly processed, practiced life. It is just what the secret has been for me to avoid all the poverty of my own intentions. So as I look at, well, how do I put that into practice, or how do I put that into a tactical business suggestion? We need to make decisions. And see, that's difficult for some of us because that means we need to make commitments. Like we have to make a commitment to ourselves and to other people and to the day and to the week and to the calendar and to the schedule. And I will say, like, some people have gotten far in life and have become wildly successful without really making committed decisions consistently. Like I have some partners like that. Oh, I don't know, that's 2 weeks away. Let get back. What do you mean it's 2 weeks away? I have a very practiced schedule. Like I can make a decision today about that day in advance because I'm good with it. And here's what happens. It avoids me being swayed by novelty, by what is shiny, by other opportunity, because I've already made the decision. We've done a lot of work in this group around that GPS and building a world around the GPS and a plan and a playbook. I've already made the playbook. I've already decided that I'm going to run those plays. Like if it is not on that sheet of paper and you come to me and say, hey, what about this? What do you think about this? Want to do this? We should do that. Want to partner here? Like the answer is, if it relates to something on my playbook for this year, great. If it doesn't, the decision has to be no. because I've already made my decision. I know the plays that I'm running. I have a practice. And so Seth Godin talks about, and he's one of my favorites, by the way, but he talks about walling off decisions, which means that's how I respond. Like when things go awry, on the field, it's when we try to get super creative. I'm going to forget the coach's name, see what I shouldn't do, but there was a coach, I'll remember it, that the coach for the college coach for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Someone's going to put it in the chat. Whoever coached him in college, he came back to the bench after actually a behind the back pass that led to a I mean, right? It was a great play. They scored, right? They were winning, and he said, "We lost that point." And Kareem said, "Well, what do you mean?" No, we scored that point. And he said, there's a 40% chance that a behind the back pass works, and there's an 80% chance that a chest pass works. You made a bad decision. See, but if we had made all the decisions up front, like, we don't have to make a decision. Am I going behind the back or am I going chest pass? For us in our business, I've just laid out my decisions. Like, I follow a path, I wall off those decisions, and there's less risk or change. Some of you are thinking boring. Like, some of you think like, well, then I don't want that. Like, that's not my world. I don't want that life, Chris. Well, that's fine. That's a choice. That's the cool thing. We all get to choose. But Katie asked me to share, hey, what is the one thing that has helped you get where you are? And that is one of them, right? The power of practice and turning that practice into a process of how I make business decisions, which leads to one more thought, and then we're going to break out. But it's a real one. And it's this conversation of sunk costs. I think a lot of us run our business on sunk cost bias. In other words, we have so much sunk cost into an activity, into something that we've done for so long that we don't want to change, or we want to keep on doing it. And I deal with this a lot, right? People will say, don't get so hung up on the fact that you've always done it that way. This happens, and I'm going to prime the pump for the mastermind later, but this happens in our lead generation. Like, well, I've done it for 7 years. I can't stop now farming, and I'm not saying don't do that, but that's a good example. Like, if we're not getting a result, here's what we need to mentally agree to. A sunk cost is a gift to yourself from your former self. Now, the question is, do I have to accept that gift? Some of us are accepting gifts that our former self paid for years. We have to remember that the old self paid for it, not our current self. The current self didn't pay for that gift. And some of the things we paid for are not worth having anymore. That might be a relationship. It might be a strategy. It might be, right? If we're not careful, we always have to weigh a practice or a process against whether or not the return or the result is being delivered. And if we're stuck accepting the gift of a former payment that we made, some habits, some activities just are emotionally difficult to break. But here's how I think about it, and here's how I want us to think about it. Breaking some habits is a gift to your future self, right? Not your current self, but your future self. So be careful. Be careful as we think about process and practice and how to find those and build those into different areas of our business. And we have sort of pillars of our business. We also have to say, am I stuck on a sunk cost bias because I've invested so much time, so much energy, or even money from the past that I'm just going to keep on doubling down? Like, it's a client that I've spent so much time with. I've shown them so many homes that I gotta close a deal now with them so I can get my $6.33 an hour that I'll get when the closing happens. Like, that is a sunk cost. Be careful. Like, it's a gift from your former self saying, hey, here's your client. Like, you keep it. I do not need that gift. There are certain areas of our life that we're doing that in. Fair? All right. So that is number one for me, Katie.
So thank you for that. So let's do a little masterminding around that. The question is, what is one process, whether it be operational, production, agent growth, what is one process that will move the business forward this year? And so I'm going to put you into breakout rooms real quick. And that is the question. And I'll put it in the chat. What is one process that will move the business forward this year? Good.
All right, we have people coming back in from their breakout rooms. As they do, since not everyone's here, anyone want to share maybe some thoughts that anyone had in their room that were bright, or you wrote down as something that you could execute or work on in terms of process or practice in the coming year?
Yeah, I'd first like to just share. My name is Logan Garretts, and my business partner, Austin Hunt, and I just transferred our license yesterday to Keller Williams. And we are so happy to be here. And Chris, so wonderful to see you and be back with you as well. So I'll go ahead and start. It was really neat. Elizabeth was in our group, and Austin and I have a newsletter that's going out this year, and we're working on consistently doing marketing for our newsletter to get 12 out this year, because we're not consistent last year. And Elizabeth has been doing that for over 25 years consistently every month, and shared how awesome that's been and the impact. And then she's going to connect with me to help give us even some more opinion and her advice. And so really awesome stuff, and just really excited to be consistent and get a newsletter out every month to our sphere.
Very cool. Who else? Who else has a practice that they thought could help operationally, production wise, attraction wise to the business this year? Those that don't know me yet will figure out real quick that I am super cool with long, awkward pauses. I won't fill those.
I'll share. For
Thank you,
us,
Christy.
it's kind of a strange thing because my team just kind of abruptly doubled in size. Turns out recruiting can accidentally work all on one day. And one day was fun. But one of the things where we're really focusing on is actually creating processes around our accountability with each other. It's easier when you're a small team to do that one-on-one, but all of a sudden when you jump to a larger team, and I mean, I'm not huge by any of some of y'all's scales, but it's that's something that we literally just sat down this week and we're like, okay, we're going to need some more consistent processes around this if we're going to be able to do this with a bigger group.
Yeah, it's interesting. The process of what I'm accountable to the business as a business owner, because that's who's in this room. And then if my people need to count on me to be consistent and follow a process, then I can then look and count on them to be consistent and follow a process. That's the beauty of that GPS. As I look at the 4 or 5 strategies of production, and those have been the practice of our business for a long period of time. When I look at those 4 or 5 production practices, then I'm able to look at an agent and say, okay, well then what is your practice? Is it 1 of these? Is it 2 of these? Is it 3 of these? What can I count on? And that rhythm of practicing that same conversation year over year over year, it's just the cycle of how that business runs. Yeah, I love that, Christy. One more thought, and then we'll switch gears. That's one for accountability, which is good. Anyone talk about operationally or a lead generation practice or process that they need to fit into their business this year?
I'll go. Janet Spisak. I'm in Marysville Market Center.
Good to see you,
And a
Janet.
couple of us had this in our group, and that was just our touch systems, getting our touch systems really dialed in to our databases. And so I'm working on that. I had that conversation with Via day before yesterday, I think. So
Yeah, what's interesting is if we don't, as an industry, finally get that done, we've now realized that our industry is getting taken over by other companies and other businesses that said, hey, this is pretty simple. Why haven't you done it yet? Right? We talk about that every single year. And I think if we didn't have accountability before, we do now, because other companies are doing it before we finally got around to it. So Janet, really smart to think about, like, what is that practice and process for just the relationship, right? Touch for that database, or maybe I'm not in relationship with them yet, but I need to be or want to be. What is that process? Like, I just think our industry, you can look at any one of those third-party companies, the Zillows of the world, the Opcities of the world, the Realtor.coms of the world, and they actually just out-realtored the realtor in process and in practice. And that's the only reason why conversion ratio seems higher for them. And that's because they had a practice and a process for the last 3 or 4 years. And if you did for the next 3 or 4 years, your conversion ratio on those would be as good, potentially better than they are in any one of those paid for lead sources that you're priming the pump with to keep you going. Fair? All right, I'm gonna transition and give you one more thought, if that's cool, Katie. Do I have time to do that?
Totally.
Okay. She gave me time for one, but I'm going to go for two. So first is practice, right? And that, then another word for that is consistency. The other thing I think is something that I would say has been the differential for me. And you hear, this is not going to be new for those of you who have been showing up for the last 12 months. But it's this concept of playing the long game. I just think that no matter what part of the business I look at, and it's always easy in hindsight, but I have just been consistently willing to play the long game. And the challenge there is sometimes the short game is dreadfully painful. Sometimes the short game is where all of our doubts show up, like we're doing this wrong. Sometimes the short game is where we sort of, find funner, if that's a word, more fun things to do, more exciting things to do. I think if we're not careful, training and events and breakouts even become a place where we can lose our practice, right? And stop playing the long game. But realistically, if we look at any company that has legacy, every one of those CEOs, founders, each one of you, some of you already on this call, you were willing to play the long game. Paul, you and I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and the reality is the foundation of your business, which is one of the biggest in the country and our region, so congrats on that, is because you have had a history of playing the long game. Like you're in the same chair as you were when I talked to you 2 weeks ago, and you were probably there yesterday and the day before and the day before, and I'm in the same chair as you've seen me too, because we're playing the long game. Here's why we don't like to. It is not your fault. Some years back, I did a session with Ben called Mastering Time and Money. And I've done pieces of that for our market centers as well. But as I began to research time, the one thing that kept on coming up was the Industrial Revolution. And some of you have heard me talk about this. I got wildly fascinated with the Industrial Revolution, and I just spent probably way too much time studying it and researching and reading about it. But in that research, I came across a man named Frederick Taylor. No one knows who he is. And I wish actually we didn't, because I think our world would be slightly better if we didn't. So sorry, Frederick. But during the Industrial Revolution, there a lot of good came out from that. But one of the things that really hurt us as a human race is that we got obsessed with shortcuts. Like we got obsessed with how do we do this faster? Like how do we produce more cars in less time, right? And the good news is they were also like they were also concerned with quality. But here's what Frederick Taylor did. Like we were already pumping out, like they were already pumping out a good number of cars off of that assembly line. Like we could have been high-fiving about that, but instead he showed up to the plant with a stopwatch and he said, what if we shaved off 30 seconds on every single part made on this car? Like there are about 400 parts made. If it was 30 seconds, think about how many minutes we would save. And he became obsessed, and actually people, business loved it. And so what happened as an industry, right? And as workers in that, right? Because all of our relatives came from the Industrial Revolution, we began to look for ways to do it faster. What are the shortcuts? And we all are looking for shortcuts as humans, but in business, there are no shortcuts. See, Frederick Taylor wanted to convert time into money, right? Frederick Taylor was weaponizing capitalism, right? And there are certain pieces of our business that absolutely like that's efficiency, and we can have conversations about that. But the fact is there's no shortcut to build a legacy business. We like 23 years later, as someone says, hey, what has been your secret? Well, gosh, I hope it's not a secret. Like, I hope it's been clear that I've been here every day since you met me, right? I'm willing to show up and play that long game. And it's okay. It doesn't mean that you're working too hard. It doesn't mean that the influencer that just brought in $17.3 million last year because they launched 17 TikTok videos. Like, I would argue that that's actually false too. To give them credit where credit is due, they actually shot 17,000 videos. You saw 17 and they made 17 million. Still seems like a shortcut. However, like there's always work behind what we are looking for in the shortcut. On this topic, while we're playing the long game, I'm going to just share one more thought and then we'll break out again. And it's one that I shared with my team last week, and a lot of people saw some of those notes get posted on social from some of our team members. But we have to agree while we're playing that long game that we're going to show up as a professional, and that's hard for some of us to do. But there's a difference between being a professional and an amateur, and there's this sort of underlying current right now in the world in general that says, hey, like, life is too short. Don't spend any time doing something that you don't love, right? They say, do what you love, but doing what you love is for amateurs. Loving what you do is for professionals. And there's a difference. I love what I do. If I was doing what I loved for a living, everyone on this room would be willing to pay me to read books, but no one in this room is willing to pay me to read books. And so I build real estate companies, but I love doing that. Whether that was preordained love or I've learned to love it, that is the difference between being an amateur and being a professional. Be careful. Like, some of us want to tap out because we're like, well, I don't know if I love this anymore. Like, I don't know if I ever really did. How did I start? Like, where did I get here? How did I get here? And we decide that we're going to go off and open up the cupcake shop, or we're going to go off and we're going to become a snowboard instructor, or we're going to go off and we're going to get sponsored by Nike to run all day. Like, none of that is going to happen. And I promise you, if it did, then that would be your job. See, amateurs get to show up when they want to and when they feel like it. And you know what's cool about that? That's a hobby. And so I read when I want to, I read when I feel like it. But if we want to be a professional, then we need to be willing to work. We need to be committed. We need to not miss the deadline. We need to not throw a tantrum. We need to be professional at what we do for money. And there's a difference. And we need to be willing to do that over the long term. Playing the long game is one of the biggest differentials that I see with wildly successful business owners and those that sort of have peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys and peaks and valleys. So there you have it, Katie. Like, you asked me for more two. Number one, it's practice, like developing a practice that I stick to consistently in business. And I take that and I say, okay, what is my practice operationally? What is my practice from a lead generation, lead conversions? Like, because that's the business I'm in. What is the practice to continue to attract talent to that business? And then the second part is I am willing to run that playbook over the long term. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to do one more breakout real quick. And the question for this one is, what in your business is a long-term game? What in your business is a long-term game? So one question, we're going to do 7 minutes, and I've randomized the breakout rooms again. So it'll be a little bit of a different group. So do a quick intro and answer that question. And here we go. All right, we've got 30 people back. I think that's everyone. Well, welcome back, guys. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope that you are getting a lot and meeting some new people in these mastermind groups. I would love to hear maybe 2 ahas or 2 things you learned or masterminded around what in your business is a long-term game. Who wants to share? I'm learning to take awkward silence like Chris.
Hi, my name's Paul.
Hi, Paul.
With Team Builder Keller Williams up in Kirkland. I think in our group, it was some level of consistent outreach and touch with database. I think that was the unifying message. A couple different ways of going about it, but that strikes me as a long game. Takes a bit of patience for that one, but that was the commitment that I heard.
Awesome. That's a really good one. What else? One more.
Anyone talk about long-term game with talent and people in your world?
It's a big one.
If you find yourself with 4 people showing up in your world all at once, I would challenge that oftentimes that's because we're playing the talent game like we often played the real estate game when we got into it. We ended up with 3 transactions and then no transactions, and 3 transactions and then no transactions. So you end up with 3 agents and then no agent, right? And that's a lot of stress on you, a lot of stress on your ops and systems, a lot of stress on development, and then each of them gets a completely different experience while they're onboarding as well. So playing the long-term game in business development, which is talent acquisition, is a key for sure.
Ah, I love that. Thank you for being our second aha. Leslie, do you want to close us out and give us some updates on our next mastermind?
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the new format. Please feel free to give us additional feedback. And 2 things as we wrap up the call today. Watch for our wrap up email that we send out, usually within 24 hours of this. We are going to embed another survey in that email if you have not already taken it, to collect topics to focus on for the rest of the year. So please watch for that. Please take the survey so we can bring you only those topics that are bringing the most value to your business. And a reminder that this Path to $1 Million elite group, based on production, will typically meet the 3rd Thursday at 11 o'clock every month, except for when we have a conflict. So we know that in February that most of you will be attending family reunion during that day and time. So please note that February, we're going to move you up a week. We're not going to skip the month. We're just going to move you up to February 10th at 11 o'clock. So you might want to make that adjustment in your calendar. So watch for that wrap up, watch for that calendar invite, and we will see you all next month for the next great topic and guest. So thank you all and have a powerful day.
Hi guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.